Hi there, my name is Angela Hairston. I am the superintendent of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and I'm so delighted to be here with you today to read to you two Mrs. Gibsons. The story is by Toyomi Egas, and pictures are by Dara Wells. So we'll start off today by taking a look at a couple of introductory pictures that are here. I'm excited to be with you today again. This is a children's book, and it certainly is exciting to be able to share with you. So I'll start off. I once knew two Mrs. Gibsons. These were two Mrs. Gibsons. This Mrs. Gibson was tall. Her skin was the color of chocolate. She was born in America in a place called Tennessee. This Mrs. Gibson was small. Her skin was the color of vanilla. She was born in Japan in a place called Gifu. So this is one Mrs. Gibson, and this is number two Mrs. Gibson. Born in different countries, Tennessee in the United States, and one in another country, Japan. This Mrs. Gibson here, this first, we'll call her first Mrs. Gibson, and I'll call her Mrs. Gibson number two. Mrs. Gibson number one gave hugs that were like being wrapped up in a big fat bearskin rug. "Come here and give me some sugar," she would say. Mrs. Gibson number two gave hugs that were like wrapped up in light brown filled comforters. At bedtime, she stroked my hair. Sakura, until I fell asleep. Have you ever had that happen? That feels so good in the evening. Mrs. Gibson number one, born in Tennessee, was loud. She had a big laugh and a big voice, which would get louder when she was angry and when she was singing. And she seemed to be singing all the time. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." The second Mrs. Gibson was quiet. She could cover her mouth when she laughed. She could never, ever show her teeth. And when she was angry, she actually got quieter. Mrs. Gibson number two, born in Japan, had small hands that could make the littlest, prettiest strokes of a pen when she could write our names in Japanese. She did that quite often, by the way. Mrs. Gibson number one, born in Tennessee, had a little larger hands. She looked like she could play keys on a piano all day long, and she played her favorite spirituals. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." She would say, "Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." Now, I don't sing, so if you're laughing at me by now, that's okay. Sometimes Mrs. Gibson number two in Japan would look kind of sad. And then she would let me dress up in one of my kimonos she had packed away in the old trunk. These were very special to her. She could say as she tied the obi around my waist, "Don't get dirty." And so this is dress up time, playtime with Mrs. Gibson number two, born in another country in Japan. The other Mrs. Gibson's clothes were very much a little bit too big for me really to dress up in, but I like to wear her fancy hats. "This is my Sunday go meeting hat," she would say. And she would say that she'd take this long pointy hat pin out of my hand, and she would always remind me, "Don't get my hat dirty." See this beautiful hat that Mrs. Gibson number one would allow me to wear and dress up in. In the evening in the garden, Mrs. Gibson number one from Tennessee would help me make magical lamps by catching fireflies. Have you ever seen fireflies in the backyard? We call them sometimes lightning bugs. They would glow and glow, and then we'd let them go once we caught them. And here's a picture of some of the fireflies in the backyard. And I hope you're getting outside and enjoying the outdoors in the evening as well. Later at dinner time, this is Mrs. Gibson number 2, would make more magic. Her hands would turn little bits of napkins into a whole flock of long-necked cranes. We would throw them in the air where we would fly and fly them higher and higher, and then they'd flutter to the ground. Happy birds, we would say. And Mrs. Gibson number 2 taught the art of origami. This was a little different. I'm learning a little bit about art. Mrs. Gibson always had a pot of rice cooking. We would eat it in bits of meat and vegetables on it. And this is Mrs. Gibson in Japan with plenty of soyu. Anytime we were hungry, we could take her long chopsticks and stir it up in the dinner in the blink of an eye. Now, I tried chopsticks once or twice. It took me a minute to learn how to eat with chopsticks. It's not easy. Mrs. Gibson number 1 always had a pot of greens, turnip greens, dandelion greens, mustard greens, everything she cooked for a long time. And this is Mrs. Gibson from Japan, and Mrs. Gibson from Tennessee. And I can tell you, I love turnip greens. I cook them often myself. This Mrs. Gibson had short curly hair, and she would braid my hair. She'd braid my hair as we listened to the radio. She liked to braid my hair too, but she would always give me one big fat braid that would hang down my forehead. That sounded like my mom all the time. I didn't really like that braid, and I didn't either. The author was saying I didn't like it, and I'm telling you I didn't like it either, but I wore it because I love my mom. But Mrs. Gibson number 2 would come right behind her and take it out and do something different with my hair. While they both wanted to do something different with my hair, I had my own thoughts too. This was Mrs. Gibson's name, and her name was actually Kazumi. Everyone called her Kaz or Connie because they couldn't pronounce Kazumi. I called her Mommy because she was my mother. And this is Mrs. Gibson number 2 from Japan. This Mrs. Gibson was Viola. Everyone called her Vi or Reverend Gibson because she was a church minister. I called her Nanny because she was my grandmother. So Mrs. Gibson number 1, born in Japan, was my mother, according to our author. And Mrs. Gibson number 2 was my grandmother, born in Tennessee. I once knew 2 Mrs. Gibsons. They were very different, but they had a lot in common. They both loved my daddy, and they both loved me. And here is the Gibson family. Thank you for allowing me to read the story to you today. I hope you are enjoying your families, and I hope you're getting some time to go outside and do some fun things with family. This is the time to do it. Have a great day.